Mr. Miyagi, I want to learn karate. And so Mr. Miyagi's out there, and he tells him kind of this strange thing. He said, if you're walking down the road, you walk on, one side of the road, you're safe. If you walk on the other side of the road, you're safe. But if you walk in the middle, he goes, and so he said the same things with karate. You can either accept to do karate and you're safe. You can not do karate at all and you're safe. But if you walk down the middle, or if you just kind of go halfway, and so then Daniel's son says, all right, I'm in. And Mr. Miyagi says, okay, you have to do anything I say. Got it. We'll do it. So they make a deal. Daniel sticks out his hand, and Mr. Miyagi slaps a sponge in his hand. And he says, okay, wash cars. And he does the classic wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. So Daniel, all day, wax on, wax off, wax, And then the next day shows up and thinks, all right, now I've waxed and washed this guy's car. Surely he'll teach me karate. And so the next day he comes, and Mr. Miyagi has him sand his deck, and he sands and sands. So the next day, Daniel's thinking, okay, I've washed his cars. I've sanded his deck by hand. There's no other work to be done. Now he can teach me karate. Mr. Miyagi takes him out to the fence, and he has him paint up and down, and then side to side. And so when he gets done painting the fence, and he's really upset by now, and so he tells Mr. Miyagi, I'm done. You're not teaching me anything. And that's when Mr. Miyagi says, Daniel, son, wax on, and he throws a punch at him. And what Daniel didn't realize is the whole time he was learning muscle memory. And so when Mr. Miyagi throws the punch, he waxes on and blocks it. And he says, wax off, and he throws a punch on the other side, and he blocks it. Daniel didn't realize that he had been taught everything he needed to do to defend himself. He had been given all these tools by a teacher. Peter tells the believer the same thing. You have been given everything by God to follow Him and be a partaker of the divine nature. You may not know it, but when you follow Jesus, you've been given all these things. You may not feel like it all the time, but God's given you everything you need. Peter continues down to verse 5. And he starts with these practical identifiers of the journey a believer is on. It's like a marathon. When a person runs a marathon, they see the mile marker. And so they know at mile 2, they've made progress. At mile 15, they've made progress. This is sort of what Peter's telling us. He's given these godlike characteristics. It would have been for a believer to have. And he starts with faith. He starts with faith, and he says, this is the basis. Again, if you don't have this, or if you're not a believer, the rest of these cannot apply. You can't have brotherly love if you're not a Christian. That's kind of, it's like a pig cannot fly type of statement is what Peter's saying. And so he goes through these lists of characteristics: faith, moral excellence, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, brotherly kindness, and love. And each one in ancient times was thought to lead into the other. As you accomplished one, it led into the next. And so it's like a crescendo of godly character that he's pointing out. It's like knowledge. You can't gain knowledge unless you have dedication to study. I mean, it took me all of Greek 1 to learn the alphabet. So it's this constant journey. It's a constant running. It's a constant spiritual transformation that begins with faith. And on the journey of faith to love, you pick up perseverance. You pick up self-control. On that journey from faith to love, you pick up brotherly kindness. It's these characteristics that we have to have. You don't one day wake up being a Billy Graham. At some point, you have to be a Leon Club. It's a journey, and we're all a work in progress. Peter goes on to say, if these are yours and are increasing, you will neither be useless or unfruitful. He's not giving us a workspace theology. Peter's not coming and saying, what you need to do is you need to tithe this much. You need to give this much time to the church. You need to fast for this long. You need to pray for this long. That's not what he's saying. These are characteristics. You can't work towards these things. You can't go towards these things unless you're a Christian, unless you're someone who decides to say Jesus is Lord. When I was in high school, I'm sure you guys know I'm kind of an impeccable athlete. You know, you can tell by my physique. And one of the things I did in high school was I ran cross country. Again, I'm sure you can tell I was a cross country runner. You know, I only did cross country because I had to do a sport and I didn't want to play football. So, but my mom, on the other hand, now I know a lot of y'all got to meet my mom at the Thanksgiving dinner, but that wasn't my mom. That was a nice, preacher's wife who has been able to somehow put on this kind face before people. But she's not that way. As a matter of fact, we always joked with her before Nora was born that she could, grandparents now they want a fun name, like Sam's mom, we call her Nana. And so my mom was like, I've got to think of a cool name. And so I said, Mom, what we ought to have them call you is Sarge, because that's the way you are. You're the sergeant. So she was always coming up with creative ways to ruin my life. And and then she was a runner. She ran track at state, and she ran in college and stuff. And so she loves running. She ran a marathon like 2 years ago, and so she loved to run. And me being in cross country, I was there for like a minute. I was her favorite child. So at some point, my junior year in high school, I got in trouble, and I was also running cross country. So she decided that she was going to train me as part of my punishment. And it was like my best time in cross country was something like over 22 minutes, not a good time. And I ran varsity, but that's only because they counted the first 5 positions, but 7 people got the run. So the coach just let me on because I was one of the older guys, but most of the JV guys were faster than me. Most of the girls on the JV team were faster than me. So my mom decides, all right, I'm gonna take on Levi as my project. And so between the last meet and districts was about a 4-week span. And so on Sundays after church, she'd make me go up to the track with her. And the first week, she made me run 2 fast quarters, timed quarters, and jog in between, and then run a fast mile. And then the next week, it was 3 fast quarters and jog in between, and then a fast mile. And then 4 fast quarters, and it just kept building up. And for me, it was just punishment. So the day of districts arrived, and I'm taking my position kind of at the middle of the pack, where I belong. And so the race begins. And races always start out fast. And so I was kind of towards the back, and everybody kind of takes off fast. Well, as I'm jogging along, next thing I know, everyone's slowing down, but I'm not. And so I was a little bit surprised, and so I kept running. And well, next thing I know, I passed the guy who was the 6th fastest person on our team, Pete. And I was, Pete, maybe you stayed up late last night. So I pass him, and so I keep running. And next thing I know, I pass Eric. And he was the 5th fastest guy. And I thought, wow,